Hi, my name's Sarah Vanderpeer, and my uni key that we've been using for our blog for IDEA9106 is SVAN5515. So what we have here is an affinity diagram that I've been creating this morning. I've used data that I've taken from video interviews and shadowing that I did with drivers, and I also used data from some surveys that I collected using Google Forms. And I use both drivers and cyclist data for that, but mainly drivers in this instance. So what we have is a number of groups and categories that have emerged, as you can see. So let's start here on the left. Alright, so for this particular category, I looked at needs of the driver, and basically all the drivers I interviewed said that they themselves feel very proficient and confident on the roads around cyclists, but they've noticed that other drivers can be quite erratic. And they've also noticed that there are a number of novice cyclists or quite reckless, experienced cyclists who could also do with some more education around driving in the city, because to them, they can see it's not a joke and they want other people to realise the seriousness of their ramifications of road sharing and road safety. So this was summarised at a higher level by the quote, "There needs to be more driver and cyclist road sharing education, but I don't want to have to do it myself," which is something that came up again and again. So in summary of that, when we got to the pink level, it was, I think everyone needs to have more education around road sharing in Sydney. I'm already quite proficient though, so I probably don't need it. Moving on to the next column here, as you can see at the yellow level, it was all about the needs of the drivers. And basically, they were mainly driving for commute and were quite busy. And so they had the needs of not causing an accident and preserving the safety of everyone on the road, but also getting from A to B as quickly as possible. So efficiency was a very big concern. So what we summarised this as is, I need other motorists and cyclists to be confident around each other so I'm safe, and my main aim when sharing the road is to avoid accidents and get from A to B on time. So this got summarised at a pink level as, road safety is important so that there are no hassles in my day. Moving on to the third column, I looked at this yellow level about basically the constraints imposed by infrastructure in Sydney. So basically it was frustrating, commonly for drivers, that Sydney road lanes are very narrow, but they also recognise that it's often not viable in Sydney for cyclists to actually move onto the footpath to avoid cars, because the footpaths are very bumpy and they're also very narrow, and it's also endangering pedestrians if cyclists have to share with them. So we summarise that as, Sydney lacks cycling infrastructure, it's inevitable we have to share and get on. And at a higher level this became, we have to deal with each other given the circumstances. So as you can see, whilst drivers weren't necessarily thrilled about the presence of cyclists on the road, they accepted it as an inevitability here in Sydney. In the fourth column, I looked at the way that drivers actually perceive cyclists. And what came up again and again is that drivers actually see cyclists as a type or a group of people, but that doesn't mean they're able to acknowledge their individuality, or their first reaction to seeing a cyclist is they're actually looking at an individual. So what was suggested by some of the drivers themselves is they actually needed to have more visual cues from the cyclists themselves to actually recognise them as a person. So in the blue level this became, if a cyclist shows some personality, I have more empathy and see them as people. And at a pink level this became, I need you to show me your humanity to help me empathise with you. In the next column we looked at the drivers and their motivators basically. So, and also the cyclists and their motivators. So cyclists were interested in getting fit and staying healthy, as well as the obvious getting from A to B. And nearly all of the cyclists and drivers said that they were motivated more by intrinsic motivation and positivity than retribution for bad behaviour. However, all of them were time poor and they were motivated by convenience and were looking for fun things, fun experiences. So this became at the blue level. I'm time poor and I just want to relax and have fun, and also I want a fit and healthy lifestyle, but with minimum effort on my part. So summarising this at the pink level, it became, I'm happy to learn if it's fun and if it fits my plans and doesn't take up too much of my time. And lastly, in this column over here, we were looking at frustrations. Most of the frustrations actually came from drivers towards cyclists rather than the other way around. And basically what occurred from this is drivers became particularly frustrated with cyclists who expected equity on the roads when they were sharing a lane, but then when it came to particular circumstances like traffic lights, they would either turn into pedestrians suddenly, or they would do erratic and dangerous things that aren't legal and which cars aren't capable of, such as weaving between traffic, or just going straight through red lights, or getting off their bike and walking across an intersection. So what came up from this at the blue level was, if cyclists take responsibility for their own safety, I'm more cautious around them as well. And also, if cyclists obey road rules like I have to, I also treat them fairly. So to summarise this, at the pink level it became, there needs to be mutual respect demonstrated to create any goodwill. And that's the summary of our Affinity diagram as it stands today on the 24th of August. Thanks for your time.